A 9-year-old boy who lost his parents when he was a baby is diagnosed with a terminal illness and asks a doctor to pretend to be his mother for a day so he can find out what it's like. But what the boy tells her makes her cry inconsolably. In the heart of a small town in Colorado, surrounded by high mountains and fields full of colorful flowers, lived Ethan, a 9-year-old boy with big, bright eyes that always seemed to be searching for something, perhaps an adventure, or an answer to questions only he knew. Ethan was an orphan. His parents had left too soon, leaving him in the care of his maternal grandparents, Maria and Don Ernesto. Maria, a gray-haired lady with hands that reflected years of hard work, was a loving woman who always did her best to make Ethan feel loved. She cooked his favorite meals and told him stories before bedtime, and even though her heart was broken, she smiled at him every day. "You are my little warrior," she would say as she made his bed. Don Ernesto was a simple man, with a face marked by time and hardship. He had a calm disposition, but his eyes always showed concern. She smiled at him every day. "You are my little warrior," she would say as she made his bed. Don Ernesto was a simple man, with a face marked by time and hardship. He had a calm disposition, but his eyes always showed concern. He spent hours repairing things in the small house or working in the garden, but he never failed to take a moment to sit down with Ethan and ask him how he was doing. "Remember, Ethan, the sun always shines again, even on the cloudiest days," Don Ernesto would say. Even on the cloudiest days. The house where they lived was humble, with white walls and a mud roof that creaked in the heat of the sun. In the courtyard, there was an old lemon tree where Ethan liked to play, and imagine that he was an explorer traveling through worlds that only existed in his mind. He always said that when he grew up, he would build a treehouse for all his friends. However, even though he received love from his grandparents and lived in a peaceful environment, Ethan sometimes felt a pain he couldn't explain. It was a mixture of longing and emptiness. A void he could only imagine was the space left by his parents. At night before going to sleep, he would look at the stars and whisper, "Mom, Dad, can you see me from up there? I would like to meet you and play like my friends do with their parents." Despite everything, Ethan was a boy full of energy and hope. He ran through the dirt streets of the village, greeting his neighbors with his warm smile, and helped Don Ernesto pick fruit from the yard. His kindness was so great that everyone in the village knew and loved him. "That boy has a heart bigger than the world," said Doña Clara, the neighbor who always gave him candy. Maria and Don Ernesto knew that Ethan's life was not easy, even though they didn't say so. They did everything they could to ensure he had a home full of love, but they also feared what the future might hold for their grandson. On the quietest nights, when Ethan was already asleep, the two would sit in the kitchen and talk in low voices, trying to find the strength to carry on. "He's so small," Ernesto would say, with tears in his eyes. "I just want him to be happy, to feel loved, and he is," Maria would reply. Don Ernesto would take her hand and say, "We'll do everything we can." Ethan's days of playing began to change little by little. He who used to run around town with boundless energy began to feel more tired. It was strange for someone so full of life. He sat down more often to rest, and his grandparents noticed that something was wrong. "Is everything all right, my love?" Maria asked him one morning as she placed a plate of hot eggs in front of him. Ethan smiled as he always did, but his face looked paler than usual. "I'm just a little tired, Grandma," he replied in a soft voice. Maria looked at Don Ernesto, who was sitting at the table, and they exchanged a worried glance. Things did not improve. Ethan began to have small scrapes that took a long time to heal, and purple spots appeared on his arms and legs, for no apparent reason. After a few days, when he got out of bed and almost fainted, Maria decided it was time to take him to the doctor at the small health center in the village. The doctor performed some tests and recommended that Ethan be taken to a larger hospital in the nearby city. Maria and Don Ernesto were nervous, but they knew they had to do what was best for their grandson. When the test results came back, the doctor called Maria and Don Ernesto in to talk. Ethan was sitting in the waiting room, drawing on a piece of paper that a nurse had given him. "Your grandson has severe aplastic anemia, the doctor explained in a friendly but serious tone. It is a rare disease. His bone marrow, which should produce blood cells, is not functioning as it should. Maria put her hands over her face, trying to hold back the tears. But what does this mean? It's going to be okay, the doctor sighed. It means he is very weak. His body cannot fight infections, and he may need frequent blood transfusions. The treatment is complicated but not impossible. We will do everything we can. Don Ernesto squeezed Maria's hand. Strength, trying to be strong for her and for Ethan. What do we need to do? Tell us what we can do. The doctor explained that Ethan would need to stay in the hospital for intensive care. He also mentioned that a bone marrow transplant might be necessary in the future. Maria and Don Ernesto listened carefully, although the fear was evident on their faces. When they returned to the waiting room, Ethan looked at his grandparents with bright eyes and asked, "Is everything okay, Grandma?" "Grandma, you're crying." Maria quickly wiped her tears and knelt down next to him. "No, my love. Everything is fine. I'm just worried because you'll have to stay in the hospital for a while, but we'll be with you the whole time, okay?" Ethan smiled slightly. Although he wasn't very excited about the idea of staying in the hospital. "I don't like hospitals, but if you're with me, I think it will be less boring." Don Ernesto leaned beside him and placed a loving hand on his shoulder. "You're our warrior, Ethan. We'll get through this together." And so began a new stage in Ethan's life, marked by trips to and from the hospital. Needles and medicines he didn't quite understand, but faced with courage. The boy who once ran free through the fields now spent his days in a hospital room where sunlight only entered through the windows. Even so, he never lost his smile, and he never stopped being kind to the doctors and nurses. "I'm going to get better, right, Grandma?" he asked with a mixture of hope and doubt. "Of course, my love. We're going to fight together, and you'll run through the fields of the village again," Maria replied, with a heavy heart, but without showing the fear she felt. Ethan continued to draw, and in many of his drawings there was a sun, flowers, and smiling people. Even in the most difficult moments, he tried. He painted life with bright colors, as if he believed that everything could still be all right. Maria and Don Ernesto did not leave Ethan alone for a moment. Every day before sunrise, they got ready and went to the hospital. Maria prepared a small bag with things she thought would cheer up her grandson. A jar of jelly he liked, drawings he had made at home, or even a toy he had left behind. "Ernesto, don't forget his blue blanket. He always sleeps more peacefully with it," said Maria as she organized the things. Don Ernesto, although he was also tired, always nodded. "Maria, we're not going to forget anything. Let's go. Our boy is waiting for us at the hospital." Ethan's room was small, but it was always full of love. As soon as his grandparents entered, Ethan's face lit up. He was already used to the nurses coming and going, the beeping machines and the medicines that made him sleepy, but nothing was more comforting than seeing his grandparents. "Grandma, did you bring the story you promised?" he would ask, his eyes shining. "Of course I did, my love," Maria would reply, sitting down next to him. "Today I'm going to tell you what our little town was like when I was a girl. Did you know that the square had a fountain with little goldfish? Your mom and your aunts and I spent our afternoons there playing and laughing." Ethan listened attentively, imagining every detail. Sometimes he asked questions. Other times he just smiled, as if those stories took him out of the hospital for a few minutes. Don Ernesto also participated. He liked to tell funny stories about things that happened in the village, like the day Doña Clara's goat escaped and ran into the bakery, knocking over sacks of flour everywhere, and the goat was left white as a ghost, Ernesto said, laughing as he imitated Doña Clara's fright. Ethan burst out laughing, forgetting his pain and exhaustion for a moment. But when Ethan fell asleep, the smiles disappeared from the faces of Maria and Don Ernesto, who sat next to their grandson and looked at each other with concern. Maria adjusted Ethan's blanket and whispered, "He's so strong, Ernesto. But what if he doesn't make it? What if we can't help our child?" Don Ernesto took her hand firmly, trying to be the support she needed. "We can't think like that, Maria. Ethan still needs us. He'll come home again, run around the yard, climb that tree. We have to believe." Although he said those words with hope, Don Ernesto also felt the weight of worry. Every visit to the hospital was a mixture of joy at being close to Ethan, and pain at seeing him so fragile. To try to hide their fear, they did everything they could to keep the room cheerful. They brought flowers from their garden, hung some of Ethan's drawings on the wall, and even asked permission to put up a star-shaped lamp that made the room feel cozier at night. "This way he'll sleep looking at the stars like he did at home," said Maria as she placed the lamp on the bedside table. Even on the most difficult days, when Ethan was too weak to talk or play, Maria and Don Ernesto stayed by his side, holding his hand, praying silently, and giving him all the love they could. They knew they didn't have all the answers, and that the future was uncertain, but they also knew they wouldn't give up. Ethan was their heart, and they would do everything they could to see him well again. The routine at the hospital was always the same for Ethan and his grandparents, until one morning, something different happened. The door to the room opened slowly, and a young woman with her hair tied back in a simple bun and eyes full of tenderness entered, carrying a clipboard with papers. She was wearing the white coat that Ethan already knew, but her smile was new, as if that smile brought a little light into the room. "Good morning, Ethan. My name is Valeria. I am a doctor here at the hospital, and I am going to take care of you from now," she said, approaching the bed. Ethan looked at her for a few seconds, before smiling back. "Are you new here? I've never seen you before." "Yes, I'm new to the hospital. I arrived recently, but I promise I'll do everything I can to help you." "Okay," Valeria replied in a calm voice. Then she looked at Maria and Don Ernesto, who were sitting next to the bed. "You must be his grandparents. I know all this is very difficult, but I want you to know that I'm here to take care of Ethan and to help you with whatever you need." Maria, although her eyes were tired, tried to smile. "He's all we have, doctor. We just want him to have the chance to be well." Valeria nodded, understanding the weight of those words. "I know. We'll work together and do our best for him during the day." Valeria reviewed Ethan's tests and examined his medical history carefully. As she read, her face became increasingly serious. Aplastic anemia was a cruel disease, and Ethan's case was serious. He needed intensive care, and time was not on his side. Even so, she knew she had to be strong, both for the child and for his grandparents. Valeria returned to the room later and took a chair to sit next to Ethan. "Do you like to draw, Ethan? I saw your drawings on the wall. They're beautiful." Ethan smiled shyly. "I like it, but lately I get tired very quickly. Sometimes I start a drawing and I can't finish it. Then maybe we can draw together someday. I'm not very good, but I can try," said Valeria, making him laugh. She knew that in addition to medicine, Ethan needed something even more important: hope. Maria watched everything in silence, feeling that this doctor had something special. She didn't treat Ethan like just another patient. She looked at him with a kindness that seemed to come from the heart. When Valeria left the room, she ran into Don Ernesto in the hallway. He was looking at the floor, lost in his thoughts. "Doctor, do you think he's going to get better?" he asked quietly. Valeria took a deep breath before answering. "His case is complicated, Mr. Ernesto, but Ethan has something very important. He has you. He has love and strength. I'll do everything in my power to help him." Don Ernesto squeezed her hand firmly. "Thank you, doctor. We trust you." As Valeria walked back to her office, she felt the weight of that responsibility. Ethan was not just a sick child. He was a child full of life, with dreams and grandparents who would do anything for him. Valeria knew the road would be difficult, but at that moment, she decided she would not give up, no matter how big the challenge. The days began to pass, and Valeria made sure to visit Ethan whenever she could, sometimes several times a day, even when she was not on duty. She had seen many sick children in her career, but something about Ethan was different. Despite the fragility of his body, he had a strength that was reflected in his gaze, and above all, a smile that seemed to brighten even the most difficult days. During one of those visits, Valeria entered the room and found Ethan with a piece of paper in his hand, scribbling something with difficulty. He looked at her and smiled. "Although I seem tired, Dr. Valeria, I'm trying to draw you, but it's not turning out very well," he said, showing her the sheet with a drawing that, although simple, had a unique charm. Valeria approached him, laughing. "Let me see. Oh, but it's incredible. I don't think I've ever seen myself so pretty. You have talent, Ethan. He chuckled, but then sighed and put the pencil aside. I'd like to do more things. I can draw better, play outside, but I get tired very easily. Valeria sat down on the chair next to the bed and took his hand. You're right. Sometimes things seem very difficult. But you know what I see in you, Ethan? Enormous strength. Even on days when you don't feel well, you don't give up, and that's incredible. Ethan shrugged, trying to appear indifferent, but his smile showed how much he cared. I don't want my grandmother and grandfather to be sad. They have a lot to worry about. Those words deeply moved Valeria. How could such a young boy care so much about others? She realized that Ethan was not only strong, he was pure, with a heart full of love. Even in the midst of pain, that afternoon Valeria returned to the room with a small sketchbook and a box of colored pencils she had bought during her break. Look, Ethan, now you can make lots of drawings. And you know what else? I want you to do something special for me. A challenge. Draw what makes you happiest. Ethan's eyes lit up. He opened the sketchbook carefully and looked at the pencils as if they were a treasure. Thank you, Dr. Valeria. I'll make the best drawing ever. I promise. In the days that followed, Valeria began to get more and more involved in Ethan's routine. Between exams, she always made sure to bring something new, like a joke, a funny story, or a memory from her childhood. She wanted Ethan to know that despite what he was facing, he could still smile. He could still be a child. One day, Ethan suddenly asked, "Did you have friends when you were little, Doctor? Were you happy?" Valeria was surprised by the question, but replied sincerely, "I had a happy childhood, Ethan, but I lost my parents at a very young age, just like you. It was difficult at first, but I learned that we always find people who care for us, just like your grandparents care for you." Ethan reflected for a moment and said, "So you understand how I feel, right? Sometimes I just wish my mom or my dad were here, but I know they can't. So I try to be strong." Valeria felt a lump in her throat, but she smiled at him. "Yes, Ethan, I understand you. And you know what? You're stronger than you think." Each conversation strengthened the bond between them. Valeria no longer saw Ethan as just a patient. She saw him as someone special, someone who made her reflect on what really mattered in life. And Ethan, for his part, saw in Valeria a refuge, someone he could trust. Ethan's smile was his greatest weapon against sadness, and Valeria knew she had to protect it. She didn't have all the answers, but she was sure of one thing: she would do everything possible to keep that light inside him alive. It was a quiet afternoon in the hospital. The sun was shining through the window, and Ethan was quieter than usual. He was holding the sketchbook Valeria had given him, slowly doodling. Valeria sat by the bed. She noticed his silence and asked him with a kind smile, "What are you drawing today, Ethan? It looks important." He looked up, thinking, "I'm drawing a mother and her son, but I haven't finished it yet." Valeria leaned in a little to get a better look. The drawing was simple but full of feeling. A woman was holding a child's hand, and they both seemed to be smiling. "It's turning out beautifully. Is it your imagination, or are you drawing someone in particular?" Ethan was silent for a few seconds, looking at the paper, then took a deep breath and said in a low voice, "I never knew what it would be like to have a real mom. I don't remember them. My grandmother told me stories, but it's not the same." Valeria felt a tightness in her heart, but tried to keep her tone soft. "It must be difficult, Ethan, but you have your grandparents who love you very much." He nodded slowly, but remained thoughtful. After a moment, he looked at Valeria with his big, bright eyes, although this time there was something different about them. "Dr. Valeria, you can be my mom for a day, just for a day. I always wanted to know what it would be like." Valeria was completely surprised by the request. At Valeria, with his big, bright eyes, although this time there was something different in them. "Dr. Valeria, you can be my mom for a day, just for a day. I always wanted to know what it's like." Valeria was completely surprised. The request was so unexpected, so pure, that she didn't know what to say right away. She took a deep breath, trying to hold back the tears that began to fill her eyes. "Ethan, that's very special to me. Why do you want me to be your mom for a day?" He clenched the pencil between his little fingers and looked at the notebook. "Because you make me feel cared for, like I imagine a mom would. You always smile at me, tell me stories, and worry about me. I know you're just pretending, but I wanted to know how it feels." Valeria felt a lump in her throat. The power of that request was immense, and the love Ethan was seeking was something all children should have. She reached out and took his hand, warm and fragile. "I would be very honored, Ethan. If that's what you want, then we'll make this day special, just for us." Ethan's face lit up with a shy smile, but one full of happiness. "I really would, yes. I would. You deserve to know what it feels like to be loved like that. We'll plan everything together, okay?" Ethan just nodded, his eyes shining with excitement. At that moment, Valeria understood that this promise was not only for him, but also for herself. She would make that day unforgettable, because she knew that the love he was asking for was something she would carry with her forever. That night, after leaving the hospital, Valeria couldn't sleep. The image of Ethan, with his eyes full of hope as he made that innocent request, wouldn't leave her mind. She sat at the small kitchen table with a cup of cold tea in her hands, staring into space. Being mother for a day, a phrase so simple but with such profound meaning. She thought about how strong Ethan was, even with all the pain he carried. He didn't have the freedom to play like other children, to run through the fields of the village, or to live a normal childhood, and yet he continued to smile, dreaming and wishing to feel a mother's love, even if only for a day. Valeria rested her head in her hands, feeling the weight of that request. "Why did it affect me so much?" she murmured, as if trying to understand the whirlwind of emotions that filled her heart. Ethan saw her as something she never imagined she could be. A mother, someone who could offer him comfort, security, and love. Even in such a delicate moment, she remembered her own childhood, the lonely nights after losing her parents, the emptiness she felt when she had no one to hug her when she was afraid. She thought about how different it would have been if someone had offered to give her that hug, that love she so desperately needed. And now here he was, needing her in a way that went beyond medicine and treatment. He needed to feel that he wasn't alone, that he was loved completely. Even if the time she had left was short, being a mother wasn't just a matter of blood or time, she murmured to herself. It was about being present, giving everything for someone, even when there were no guarantees. Valeria felt tears running down her face. It wasn't something she did often, but that night she allowed herself to cry, to pray, not because of the weight of responsibility, but because of the privilege of being so important to Ethan. Even if it was only for one day, she wanted to be the mother he never had. She wanted to show him that even in such an unfair world, love, affection, and people willing to make a difference still existed. She took a deep breath, dried her tears, and looked at the notebook she had brought from the hospital. In it, Ethan had drawn a woman and a child holding hands. Valeria ran her fingers gently over the paper, as if she could feel the emotion he had put there. It wasn't just a request. It was the silent cry of a child who just wanted to be loved, who just wanted to know what it was like to have a mother. The next morning, when she entered the hospital, Valeria was determined. She knew she couldn't change Ethan's past or guarantee his future, but she could do something for his present. She could show him with every gesture that he was special, and that the love he dreamed of did exist. He didn't need to be strong all the time, because that day, she would be there for him. She would be what he needed, a mother like he imagined and deserved. Valeria entered Ethan's room with a different smile. There was something special about that day, a feeling that even she couldn't explain. Ethan was sitting on the bed with his sketchbook on his lap and pencils scattered around him. As soon as he saw her, he smiled shyly, as if he were afraid she had forgotten what he had asked her. "Dr. Valeria, did you remember?" he asked, almost in a whisper. His eyes shone with hope, but they also held a little doubt. She approached the bed, sat down next to him, and gently took his hand. "Of course I remembered. I promised, didn't I? Today is your special day. Today I'm your mom." Ethan's eyes filled with tears, but he didn't cry. He just squeezed Valeria's hand as if he wanted to keep that moment in his heart forever. "Doesn't it seem silly?" Valeria shook her head and smiled. "Of course not. It seems very important to me, and if it's important to you, it's important to me too." He took a deep breath, trying to control his emotions. "I never knew what it was like to have a mom. I always imagined it would be someone like you." Those words were like Valeria felt a lump in her throat, but she managed to keep her voice steady. "Then let's make this the best day ever. Do you have any special wishes, son?" Hearing the word son, Ethan couldn't hold back. He smiled as if he had waited his whole life to hear those words. I want us to do simple things. You know, play a little, eat something delicious, and tell me a story before bed." Valeria smiled. "We'll do all that. I'm more than happy to. But first, what do you about starting with a gift?" She took a small package from behind her back. It was something simple, but made with love. A teddy bear with a blue scarf. Ethan took the gift carefully, as if it were something precious. "Is this really for me? I've never had one of these," he said, hugging the bear to his chest. "It's yours. And you know what? You can choose its name." He thought for a moment before saying, "I'll call it Miguel, like my dad. That way, it will protect me." Valeria was thrilled with the choice, but just smiled. Miguel is a great name. Now that we've started our day, Valeria and Ethan took advantage of every moment together. She brought balloons to decorate the room. They played guessing games, and even sang some songs she remembered from her childhood. For lunch, she brought something special, pancakes with honey, which he loved but rarely got to eat in the hospital. "Pancakes in the hospital? That's against the rules, right?" Ethan joked, laughing. "Maybe a little, but today is a special day. Remember? Today, everything is allowed," Valeria replied, winking at him. In the afternoon, Valeria took him to the small hospital garden. Ethan felt the sun on his face and looked at the flowers, as if it were the first time he had seen the outside world in a long time. He held Miguel the teddy bear the whole time, as if it filled him with strength. At the end of the day, back in the room, Ethan lay down, tired, but with a smile that Valeria had never seen before. She sat down next to the bed, took his hand, and asked, "Ready for the story, son?" "Yes. I want a story that has love in it, like today," he said, his eyes beginning to close. Valeria told him a story about a brave boy who faced everything with a smile because he knew he was loved. When she finished, she realized that Ethan had already fallen asleep, still hugging his teddy bear. She stayed there for a few minutes watching him sleep. She felt that this day had been more than special for him. It had been special for her, too. "Thank you for letting me be your mom for a day," Ethan whispered, before turning off the light and leaving the room. The next day, when Ethan woke up, he looked around, trying to take in every detail. There were balloons hanging in every corner, new toys scattered on the table next to his bed, and even a small cake with his name written on it. He hugged Miguel, his teddy bear, tightly and smiled. He had never had a day like this before. "It's the best day of my life, and it's just beginning," said Valeria, with a twinkle in her eyes. "Are you ready for more surprises?" Ethan nodded enthusiastically. Valeria helped him out of bed, with the care necessary for his fragility, and took him to the small hospital garden, where another surprise awaited him. The garden was decorated with ribbons and flowers. A small table with juice and cookies had been set up, and a radio played soft music in the background. Some of the other children hospitalized there were also there, ready to play with Ethan. As soon as he arrived, Ethan's eyes filled with emotion. He took a deep breath when he saw the other children, smelled the flowers, and felt the warmth of the sun on his face. "Doctor, this is incredible. I don't even know what to say." "You don't need to say anything, my son," Valeria replied, using that affectionate term that now came so naturally to her. "I just want you to enjoy every moment." The children began to play together, running around the garden, while Ethan, although limited, participated as best he could. He laughed as he hadn't done in a long time, played soccer while sitting down, and even tried to make soap bubbles that floated in the air, reflecting the colors of the rainbow with each smile he gave. Valeria felt her heart was filled with warmth. She knew that those hours were precious, not only for him, but also for everyone who loved him. After a while, Ethan asked to sit on a bench under the shade of a tree. He looked at Valeria, who was beside him, and said, "Doctor, or rather Mom, did you know that these have been the happiest days of my life?" Valeria smiled, feeling the tears welling up, but she held back her emotion. "It makes me very happy to hear that. But today, you're in charge too. What else do you want to do?" He thought for a moment. looked up at the sky, and replied, "I just want to stay here a little longer, feel the sun, and listen to the birds." Valeria nodded and took his hand. They remained like that for a few minutes in silence, just enjoying the moment. For Ethan, it was as if the weight of his illness had disappeared, even if only for a moment. For Valeria, it was a lesson in the value of the little things. Later, back in the room, Ethan received one last surprise. Valeria brought a small box and handed it to him. "This is for you, Ethan, so you'll never forget this day." He opened the box carefully and found a photo that Valeria had taken of him in the garden with the other children. On the back was written, "Ethan's happiest day. With love, your mom." For a few days, Ethan held the photo fondly and looked at Valeria with shining eyes. "I'll never forget this, Mom. Thank you for everything. Sometimes I wonder what my parents would be like. Would they laugh at what I say? Or would they call me son like you do?" Valeria felt her heart tighten. She knew it wasn't easy for him to talk about it, but she also understood that it was his way of getting closer to her. For a moment, she hesitated about whether she should tell her own story, but then she decided that maybe it was time to show Ethan that they had something very important in common. "You know something, my son," she said softly. "As I told you, I also lost my parents when I was young. I know exactly how it feels to miss them and wonder what it would be like if they were still here." Ethan turned his face toward her in surprise. "You were left alone, too?" Valeria smiled sadly. "Yes, I was about your age when it happened. At first it was very difficult. I felt lost, as if a part of me had gone with them. But with time, I discovered that even though they weren't with me, they were still in my heart." Ethan remained thoughtful, hugging the teddy bear tighter. "But how did you manage to move on? Isn't it scary to forget them?" "It is very scary," Valeria replied, her eyes filled with tears. "But you know what? I discovered that every memory I had of them, every beautiful moment, was like a treasure that no one could take away from me. And somehow I felt that they were proud of me, even though they were no longer here." He looked at her intently, absorbing every word. "I don't have that many memories of my parents, but I think if they could see me now, they would like to see me with you." Valeria couldn't hold back her tears. She took Ethan's hand and replied with a broken voice, "I'm sure of that. Ethan, they are watching you, and they are very proud of the incredible child you are." Ethan was silent for a moment, but then he asked curiously, "Is that why you wanted to be a doctor? Because you lost your parents?" "Parents?" Valeria took a deep breath before answering. "Yes, that was one of the reasons. When I lost my parents, I needed a lot of help. Doctors, good people, everyone supported me. So I promised that when I grew up, I would do the same for other people. I wanted to give them the same care they gave me." He smiled, nodding slowly. "Then I think you're the right person to take care of me. You understand what it's like to lose someone, and you know how to help me." Valeria felt her heart fill with warmth at those words. "I think it's actually you who is helping me. You remind me how important it is not to give up, even on the most difficult days. And you know what's most special about all this? You're teaching me what it means to be a real mom." They stayed there a little longer, sharing their stories and their pain. Each word seemed to lighten the weight they both carried, creating a connection that went beyond any explanation. At that moment, Ethan was not just a patient, and Valeria was not just a doctor. They were what each other needed so badly. A family, even if only for a brief moment. The silence in the room was sweet, almost as if the world had stopped just for them. "Mom," Ethan said suddenly, using the word with such a natural tone that it made Valeria stop and look at him. He held the notebook against his chest, his eyes shining. "I did something for you too. It's so you'll remember this day, even after all this is over." Valeria approached and sat down next to him, curious. "What is it, my son? Now you have me anxious." He slowly opened the notebook and showed her the drawing. It was a simple drawing, but full of meaning. It showed the two of them together, holding hands with smiles that seemed bigger than the world. Next to them was a drawing of Miguel the bear holding a small balloon above it. He had written in crooked letters but full of effort, "Mom and son, the happiest day." Valeria put her hand to her mouth, trying to contain her emotion, but tears began to fall before she could speak. "Ethan, This is the most beautiful thing anyone has ever done for me." He smiled shyly, but happily to see her so moved. "I wanted you to have something to remember me by because you were the best mom I could have had, even if it was only for a short time." Valeria hugged him gently, feeling the fragility of his body, but also the strength of a heart full of love. "Ethan, you have no idea how much this means to me. This drawing is my greatest gift, and you know what? You made me feel like the luckiest mom in the world." He rested his head on her shoulder, holding the notebook as if it were a treasure. "Do you think if my parents could see this, they would be happy?" Valeria stroked his hair, trying to hold back her tears. "Not only would they be happy, Ethan, they would be so proud of you that their hearts couldn't contain it. You are an incredible boy." He sighed with a quiet smile. "Then I am also lucky, because I had you." Valeria remained there hugging him as the room filled with silence and the hospital lights began to turn on. She knew that this drawing was not just a gift. It was a symbol of the bond they had created that night after Ethan fell asleep with the sketchbook next to his bed. Valeria sat quietly in the room. The soft sound of his breathing was a kind of comfort, but also a reminder of what he was facing. She looked at the drawing he had given her earlier, the words mother and son engraved in her mind as if they were written on her heart. As she ran her fingers over the paper, Valeria felt a wave of emotions. She couldn't accept that Ethan's fate was marked by this cruel disease. He had so much to live for, so much love to give and receive. He was just a child, with dreams, with a whole life ahead of him. More than ever, she felt she had to fight with all her strength for him. "I won't give up on you, my son," she whispered as she watched him sleep. "I'll do whatever it takes. You deserve every opportunity life can give you." The next morning, Valeria began to take action. She spent hours in the hospital office reviewing every test and every report, looking for any possibility that could be a way out for Ethan. She read medical articles, reviewed old studies, consulted more experienced colleagues. Every little clue was like a thread of hope that she clung to with all her strength. When a nurse came in to tell her it was time for her shift, Valeria just raised her hand, asking for more time. "I need to find something for Ethan. I won't leave here until I have an answer." Throughout the day, Valeria also began to think of practical solutions. She knew that Ethan needed a bone marrow transplant, but the cost was high, and finding a compatible donor was like looking for a needle in a haystack. Even so, she did not let that discourage her. If Ethan's love had taught her anything, it was that hope was greater than any obstacle. When she visited Ethan in his room, she noticed that he was more serious than usual. "Are you okay, Mom? You look tired." She smiled, even though her eyes were red from reading and researching so much. "I'm fine, my son. I'm just thinking about how we can help you get better. You know, I'm not going to give up on you." Ethan took her hand and gave her a smile that seemed to contain all the love in the world. "You don't have to worry so much. I'm happy with you here." But Valeria shook her head decisively. "Ethan, I want more than that. I want you to play again, to run, to draw without getting tired. I want to see you grow, dream, live, and I'm going to do everything I can to make that happen." In the following days, Valeria began to involve other people in Ethan's cause. She spoke to his grandparents, explained the situation, and asked them to be strong because the road would be difficult. "I can't promise miracles, but I promise I won't stop fighting," she said, taking Maria's hand. Maria wiped away a tear and nodded. "You are an angel that God sent for him, Doctor. We will be by your side through everything." Don Ernesto, always quiet, put his hand on Valeria's shoulder and said, "No matter what you need, we are here. Ethan is our life." With the support of the grandparents and the strength that Ethan gave her, Valeria felt that nothing was impossible. Valeria's nights began to be different. While the hospital fell silent and the lights dimmed, she remained awake with piles of papers and the dim light of a lamp illuminating her tired face. Ethan was always on her mind, and the image of him holding the drawing that represented her as a mother was the strength she needed to continue amid studies, reports, and calls. Valeria began to understand that the only way to save Ethan was a bone marrow transplant. It was a real hope, something that could give him a chance to live, But when she began to calculate the costs and challenges of finding a compatible donor, she felt a lump in her throat. The cost was so high that it seemed impossible. Even so, she did not give up. She remembered that Ethan never gave up. Even on days when he barely had the strength to hold a pencil, if he could be so strong, so could she told herself. The next morning, when she visited Ethan, Valeria entered the room with a smile. Although inside she tried to hide her concern, he was waiting for her with his teddy bear in his lap and his sketchbook beside him. As soon as he saw her, he smiled warmly. She sat down next to him and took his hand. "Ethan, I found something that can help you. If we can do it, you could get better. You could run again, play, do everything you love." His eyes lit up, but he noticed the serious tone in her voice. "That's good, right? But why are you worried?" Valeria took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. "Because it will be difficult, my son. The treatment is expensive, and we need to find someone who has bone marrow that is compatible with yours. But I promise you that I will not give up. I will do everything in my power to make this work." Ethan squeezed her hand tightly, his gaze full of confidence. "If you believe, I believe too. We can do this, Mom. You teach me that every day." Those words gave Valeria the energy she needed. In the days that followed, she dedicated herself even more, sought out specialists, contacted bone marrow banks, and began to study the stories of patients who had been through the same situation. Every success story she found was like a spark of hope, proof that it was possible. One afternoon, while talking to a nurse in the hallway, Valeria heard something that made her stop. "I heard about a child who got a transplant because the whole community came together to hold events and raise money. It was beautiful to see." Idea stuck in Valeria's mind. She knew that Maria and Don Ernesto would do anything for their grandson, but it was too big a struggle for 3 people. Perhaps if everyone who knew Ethan knew his story, if they came together for him, they could achieve what seemed impossible. That night, when she visited Maria and Don Ernesto, Valeria shared her plan. "If we can tell Ethan's story to the people of the town, maybe we can raise the money we need. I know it won't. It will be easy, but it's our best chance." Maria looked at her excitedly. "Doctor, if there is a chance to save my grandson, I will do whatever it takes. We will talk to everyone. Ethan is loved by everyone in town. I am sure they will help." Don Ernesto nodded firmly. "He is the heart of our family. If we have to knock on every door, we will." Valeria felt she was on the right track. The next morning, the two began to take action. Don Ernesto, with his simple but determined manner, went to the town square. He spoke to the baker, the butcher, the shop owner, and even the children who always played there. He told Ethan's story without hiding the seriousness of the situation, but showing that there was hope. "If everyone came together, my grandson is a strong boy, but now he needs us," said Ernesto, as he held up a small sign with the drawing Ethan had made of himself. "Any help, no matter how small, will make a difference." For her part, Maria went door to door, knocking on every house and explaining Ethan's situation with a heavy heart. Some people cried when they heard the story. Others took her hand and said they would do everything they could. "Let's have a bazaar," suggested Doña Clara, a neighbor. "Everyone brings what they can donate, and all the money will go toward Ethan's treatment." The idea quickly gained momentum in the following days. Maria and Don Ernesto organized a meeting in the square to plan the event. Valeria was also there helping to coordinate the details. "We'll need posters, flyers, and maybe someone can play music on the day of the bazaar to attract more people," she said, as she wrote down the suggestions. The energy of the town seemed to have been transformed. People who may not even have known Ethan began to get involved, moved by the boy's story and by the love his grandparents showed for him. Children brought their toys to donate. Shopkeepers offered part of their profits. Even people from neighboring towns, upon hearing about the campaign, wanted to help. Maria watched all this with tears in her eyes. "I never imagined that so many people would care," she said to Valeria, as they both put up posters in the local market. "That's the power of love," Valeria replied with a smile. "Ethan touched all our hearts. He's special." Meanwhile, Don Ernesto spent his nights calling bone marrow banks and contacting specialized organizations. He barely knew how to use the phone, but that didn't stop him. "I have to find a donor for my grandson," he said in a firm voice to each person on the other end of the line. In a short time, he had found a donor for Ethan, calling bone marrow banks and contacting specialized organizations. He barely knew how to use the phone, but that didn't stop him. "I have to find a donor for my grandson," he said firmly to each person on the other end of the line. In a short time, the bazaar was organized. The town square was filled with stalls selling clothes, crafts, food, and toys, all donated by people who wanted to help. Ethan, although weak, was taken there by Valeria to see the event. When he arrived, he was greeted with applause and smiles. "Is all this for me?" he asked, his eyes wide with amazement. "Yes, Ethan," said Valeria, kneeling beside him. "These people believe in you, just like me, your grandmother, and your grandfather. We believe in you." Maria and Don Ernesto were standing nearby with tears of pride in their eyes. Ethan looked at them and said in a low voice, "I have the best family in the world." The support of Ethan's grandparents was not only try to raise funds, it was to show him that he was never alone, that there was a network of love around him, ready to fight for him every step of the way. The whole town seemed to have gained new energy. Every corner, every square, and every house breathed the same purpose: to help. It was as if the boy's story had awakened a feeling of unity that had not been seen in a long time. Doña Clara, known for her embroidery, gathered the women of the town to make blankets and clothes to would-be sold at the bazaar. "Every stitch we make is a gesture of love for Ethan," she said, holding the needle with trembling but steady hands. At the local school, the children also wanted to help. They painted colorful posters with messages of encouragement and drawings of flowers, suns, and smiles. "Let's put these posters everywhere," shouted Pedrito, Ethan's classmate. He and his friends hung the drawings on trees, walls, and shops in the town. Maria and Don Ernesto watched the mobilization with visible emotion. Maria hugged Ethan carefully, tears falling uncontrollably. "Look, my love, all this love is for you." Throughout the day, the town showed what was possible when everyone worked together. One stall sold homemade cakes, another offered handicrafts. On stage, the children performed dances and songs, bringing smiles to everyone's faces. Even Don Manuel, known for being serious, put on a funny hat and began telling jokes to entertain the audience. "If even Don Manuel is dancing, it's because Ethan is really special," someone commented, provoking laughter. Ethan watched everything with eyes full of tears. He knew that these people weren't just there to help financially. They were showing how much they cared, how much they believed in him. "I never thought so many people would love me like this," he said to Valeria, who was standing next to him. Valeria took his hand and smiled. "You deserve all this and much more, son." At the end of the day, when they began to dismantle the last stalls, the feeling that filled the air was one of victory, not only because they had raised a good amount for Ethan's treatment, but because each person had done something from the heart. There was no longer any distinction between neighbors, merchants, or children. They were all one family united by the same goal. Don Ernesto, counting the money raised, fell silent for a few moments. His eyes filled tears. "Maria, Valeria, we achieved more than we expected. This town has the most generous heart I have ever seen." Maria placed her hand on his and looked up at the sky. "It's our Ethan. He is the best gift God gave us, and now he has a chance." Valeria looked at the boy who had fallen asleep in his wheelchair with a smile on his face and felt a mixture of gratitude and hope. Ethan was sitting on the hospital bed, while Maria packed the small suitcase with his clothes and his inseparable teddy bear, Miguel. Don Ernesto was at his side, carefully folding a shirt. The atmosphere was silent, but the love and strength of everyone filled the room. Valeria entered with a warm smile, although she was visibly moved. "Ready for our great adventure?" she asked, kneeling beside him. "Yes, Mom," he replied, holding the teddy bear tightly. "But you believe?" Valeria put her hand on his shoulder and looked deeply into his eyes. "I believe it, Ethan. You've been so strong until now, And now we're going to the place where everything can change. Trust me." He took a deep breath, as if those words were the encouragement he needed. "I trust you. You never leave me alone," he told Valeria. Although they tried to remain strong, they couldn't hide their emotion. They knew that this moment was a precious opportunity, but also carried the fear of a farewell. Maria hugged Ethan carefully, letting the tears flow. "You're coming back with us, my love, and when you return, we'll build that little treehouse you always wanted." "I'll climb up the tree with you," added Don Ernesto, trying to get a smile out of his grandson. Ethan laughed softly. "Grandpa, you won't be able to climb up. I'll help you." Everyone laughed despite the tears. It was a moment of pain, but also of hope. They hugged once more before Valeria said, "We have to go. The car is waiting for us." The trip was long. Ethan sat in the seat next to Valeria and looked out the window with curiosity. The mountains of the village were left behind, giving way to roads full of cars and unfamiliar landscapes. Valeria held his hand from time to time, offering him silent comfort. "Have you been to this city before, Mom?" he asked. The silence. "Yes, sometimes, but it was never as important as it is now," she replied, looking at him fondly. "Because this time, I'm here for you." When they finally arrived at the city hospital, Ethan was impressed. It was a huge building with lots of people coming and going. Valeria noticed his hesitation and squeezed his hand. "Don't worry, I'll be with you the whole time." He took a deep breath and nodded, trying to hide his nerves. "If you're with me, I'll be fine." Inside the hospital, Valeria spoke to the doctors, handed over the documents, and explained the situation. The medical team seemed attentive and careful, which gave her a little more confidence as they performed the initial procedures. Ethan held Miguel the teddy bear as if it were his source of strength. Later, in the room, he looked at Valeria and asked, "Will it be difficult, Mom?" She sat down next to him and took his hand. "It will be a challenge, but you don't have to face it alone. I'm here, your grandmother is here, your grandfather, and everyone in town. We are all with you." He smiled. "Even though I'm tired, I'll be strong because you believe in me." That night, while Ethan slept, Valeria stayed by his side, looking at the small body that carried so much courage. She knew that the following days would be decisive, but she was ready to face anything. For her, this journey was not just an attempt at a cure. It was the greatest proof of love she could give to the child who had taught her the true meaning of being a mother. Motherhood. The treatment began with blood transfusions to stabilize Ethan's body. He had been through this before, but this time it seemed more exhausting. His little arms were marked by needles, and each new puncture filled his eyes with tears. Despite this, he did not complain. One afternoon after a transfusion, he looked at Valeria, who was by his side as always. "Mom, why does it hurt so much?" Valeria felt a lump in her throat, but she kept a smile on her face to comfort him. "I know it hurts, son, but you are so strong. Every time you face this, you are one step closer to getting better." Ethan sighed, hugging his teddy bear Miguel to his chest. "I'm scared. What if it doesn't work?" Valeria put her hand on his face, caressing him gently. "We are doing everything we can, Ethan. I believe in you, and I know you have the strength to get through this. I promise I won't leave your side." In addition to the transfusions, the doctors began to administer immunosuppressant drugs. They explained that they were necessary to prepare his body for the transplant, but the effects were difficult. Ethan began to feel constant nausea, and his body seemed to be weakening. The doctors began to administer immunosuppressant drugs. They explained that they were necessary to prepare his body for the transplant, but the effects were difficult. Ethan began to feel constant nausea, and his body seemed more fragile every day. Valeria was always there, helping him sit up, bringing him water, or simply holding his hand so he knew he wasn't alone. One night, after a particularly difficult day, Ethan tried to hide his tears, but Valeria noticed. She sat down next to him on the bed and hugged him gently. "You can cry, son. You don't have to be strong all the time. I just don't want you to be sad, Mom," he said softly. "You already do so much for me. I wish I could be stronger." Valeria hugged him tighter, letting her tears flow too. "Ethan, you are the strongest boy I have ever known. Just by going through all this with such a beautiful heart, You are already a hero. And even if you cry or get tired, I'll still be here because the important thing is that we're together." He wiped his face with his little hand and looked at her with a shy smile. "You're the best mom in the world, you know." Valeria laughed softly, even though her emotions almost prevented her from speaking. "And you're the best son, and I'm very grateful to be able to take care of you." The days continued, each with its own challenges. Ethan had moments when he felt so tired that he wanted to get out of bed, but Valeria always found a way to cheer him up, sometimes by telling him a story, other times by taking out drawings he had made before and asking him to tell the story behind them. "This one," said Ethan, pointing to a drawing of a bright sun. "I did because I wanted to remember how the sun feels on my face. It's what I like best." "And you'll feel it again," replied Valeria, taking his hand affectionately. "I promise you that." Despite all the suffering, Ethan never lost his sparkle. He found strength in Valeria's love, in the messages he received from the town, and in the memories of his grandparents. For him, every smile and every word of encouragement was like an extra dose of courage. Valeria, for her part, knew that those days were a test of strength for both of them. She was also afraid, but she knew she couldn't show it, because if Ethan believed in her, she had to believe too. "We'll make it, son," she would say every nights, one step at a time, together. The nights in the hospital were long and silent. Ethan, with his fragile body tired from the treatments, spent hours staring at the ceiling or the shadows of the lights coming in through the window. Valeria was always nearby, sitting in a chair next to the bed, holding his hand or reading a book to him when sleep seemed far away. One night, after another difficult day, Ethan called her in a weak voice. "Mom, can you stay with me tonight? Right here? Close by?" Valeria, who was already by his side, got up and sat on the edge of the bed. "Of course, son. I'm not going anywhere." He squeezed her hand tightly, as if he needed that to feel safe. "When you're here, everything seems easier. You are my strength, you know." Ethan's words pierced Valeria's heart like an arrow. She stroked his tousled hair, feeling the emotion overwhelm her. "Ethan, you are the one who gives me strength. Every day I see you fight. Every smile you give me. All of that makes me want to be the best mom for you." Ethan smiled a small smile, but one full of love. Valeria was moved to see the purity of his smile. "I am your mom forever, because love has no end. Love stays in the heart no matter what happens." Ethan sighed, as if those words brought relief to his heart. "Then you can stay here every night, just to know that you are close every night, son," Valeria promised, squeezing his hand more firmly. "I will be here taking care of you until you no longer need me by your side. But even then, I will continue to love you wherever I am." Ethan closed his eyes with a peaceful smile as he continued to hold her hand. "Thank you, Mom. When you are here, I am not afraid." Valeria stayed there watching him as he fell asleep. Each breath he took was a reminder of how hard he was fighting, how much he needed the love and care she could offer. The weeks seemed to pass slowly in the hospital. Every day was a battle for Ethan, who faced the effects of the treatments with a courage that Valeria deeply admired. But time was also a test for everyone. Maria and Don Ernesto called every day to find out the news, their concern traveling through the phone. Despite her exhaustion, Valeria kept hope alive. She knew that somewhere there was someone capable of saving Ethan. She just had to find them. One gray morning, while Valeria was organizing papers and reading in the doctor's lounge, her phone rang. It was a call she wasn't expecting, and the voice on the other end sounded urgent. "Dr. Valeria, we've found a compatible donor for Ethan." For a moment, Valeria couldn't speak. Her mind was racing, trying to absorb the meaning of those words. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Yes, the tests confirmed it. The donor is compatible and willing to help." She closed her eyes, feeling relief and joy fill her heart. Thank you so much. You've just given us a chance." As soon as she hung up, Valeria ran to Ethan's room. He was sitting there playing with his teddy bear Miguel while a nurse adjusted the equipment. When he saw her come in, he smiled, although he was visibly tired. "Mom, you look different. Did something happen?" Valeria knelt beside the bed, holding Ethan's small, nimble hands. "Yes, son. We have wonderful news. We found someone who can help you. A compatible donor. Ethan's eyes opened wide, as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. Does that really mean I can get better? Does that mean we have a great opportunity? Valeria replied with tears running down her face. It's the hope we've been waiting for. It's been so strong, and now we are closer to making that dream come true. Ethan hugged his teddy bear and looked at Valeria with a shy smile. Then all the effort was worth it. Every moment, Ethan. It was all worth it, because you never gave up. You are an example to all of us, said Valeria, stroking his hair. Later, Valeria called Maria and Don Ernesto to give them the news. Maria began to cry on the phone, thanking God with a broken voice. Doctor, you gave us back our light. My grandson has a chance, and that's all we asked for. Don Ernesto, always more reserved, let out a sigh of relief. Thank you. Valeria knew that Ethan had an angel watching over him in the village. The news spread quickly. The people who had helped with the bazaar, donated, or sent messages of support celebrated as if it were a personal victory. Ethan was not only the grandson of his grandparents, he was everyone's child. While the hospital prepared for the next steps, Valeria felt a new energy within her, despite the long road ahead. That moment was proof that love, unity, and determination could work miracles. More than ever, she knew that Ethan had a real chance to win. The day of the transplant arrived faster than anyone expected, bringing with it a mixture of hope and fear. Ethan was ready, but there was something in his eyes that showed he was also afraid. Valeria was by his side from early on, holding his hand and saying words of encouragement. You are the bravest child I have ever known, Ethan said as he adjusted his pillow. Today, we are closer than ever to fulfilling our dream. Do you think it will hurt a lot? He asked in a low voice. Valeria leaned down to his level, looking directly into his eyes. It will be a little difficult, son, but I will be alone. I'll be with you the whole time, and everyone here wants you to get better. Remember, you're stronger than you think. Ethan took a deep breath, trying to hide his insecurity. If you believe in me, I believe too. Before they took him to the procedure, Maria and Don Ernesto arrived in time to talk to him. Honey, we're here praying for you, Maria said with tears in her eyes. You're our little warrior. Everything will be fine, Don Ernesto added in a firm voice. Remember, Ethan, you carry the love of all of us. We'll be waiting for you at home. Ethan hugged his teddy bear Miguel tightly and smiled. I love you, Grandma and Grandpa. The moment of the transplant was intense. Ethan was taken to the operating room, and Valeria and his grandparents stayed outside, waiting with heavy hearts. Time seemed to stand still, and every minute was an eternity. The medical team came in and out several times, reporting that everything was going according to plan, but that the procedure was delicate. Finally, when the transplant was over, the relief was immediate. Although the real challenge was just beginning, Ethan was taken to the ICU, where he would be under observation to make sure his body accepted the new marrow. The doctors explained that the next few days would be crucial, and Valeria knew she would need to be stronger than ever in the days to come. Ethan faced complications. High fevers, extreme weakness, and difficulty eating made the process even more painful. In a moment of despair, he looked at Valeria with tears in his eyes. Mom, I'm tired. It seems like I'll never get better. Valeria took his face in both hands, wiping away his tears. I know it's difficult, son, but you've come so far. Look at everything you've achieved. All of us who love you are supporting you. You can rest when you need to, but never stop believing. Even in the most difficult moments, Ethan found ways to smile. He made jokes about the hospital and drew pictures of the doctors as superheroes in his notebook, and asked Valeria to sing him to sleep. His strength inspired not only Valeria, but also the medical team, who were even more dedicated to ensuring he received the best possible care. This boy has something special, a nurse commented one night. Despite everything that's going on, he manages to make everyone smile. Valeria nodded with a tired but loving smile. He is my greatest inspiration. If he can be strong, so can I. After weeks of ups and downs, The doctors finally gave the news everyone had been waiting for. Ethan's body was beginning to accept the new bone marrow. His fever subsided, and he slowly began to regain his strength. When Valeria entered the room to give him the news, he looked at her with bright eyes. "So I'm getting better?" he asked with a shy smile. "You're getting better, son. Stronger every day," Valeria replied with tears of relief running down her face. Ethan reached out his hand to take hers. "I only made it because of you, Mom. You never let me give up." Valeria smiled and kissed his forehead. "You are the real hero, Ethan, and I am the luckiest mom in the world to have you." At that moment, even though there was still a long road ahead, Valeria knew they had overcome the biggest obstacle. Ethan had proven that love and strength could overcome even the most difficult challenges. The days following the transplant brought hope for Valeria and for all those who loved Ethan. He began to regain color in his face. His shy smile returned, and he even asked Valeria to help him draw again. Every small advance was celebrated as a victory, one more step toward everyone's dream of his recovery. But that joy was short-lived. One morning, Ethan woke up with a high fever and a weak but constant cough. Valeria immediately noticed that something was wrong. Right. In recent days, he had been able to sit up in bed and even play with his teddy bear, Miguel. But now he seemed tired and fragile again. "Mom, I'm really cold," he said in a low voice as he held the blanket with trembling hands. Valeria touched his forehead and felt the intense heat. Her heart sank. "I'm going to call the doctor. Son, I'm going to take care of you like I always have. Don't worry." The doctors arrived quickly, performed tests, and adjusted the equipment. Valeria stayed by Ethan's bedside, holding his hand as he struggled to keep his eyes open. The doctors' expressions were serious, and every technical word they exchanged made her fear grow. Later, one of the doctors called Valeria and the grandparents into the hallway to talk. His face was marked by exhaustion, but there was something else: concern. Ethan's body is fighting a severe infection, which is common in patients who have undergone transplants because their immune systems are very weak. "We are doing everything we can," but Valeria felt the ground disappear beneath her feet. "But what?" she asked, almost without a voice. "But the chances of him responding to treatment are very low. We must be realistic about the situation. Ethan is very strong, but it may not be enough." She brought her hands to her face, trying to hold back the tears. "It can't be. He's been through so much. He's just a child. There must be something else we can do." The doctor put a hand on her shoulder in a gesture of support. "We'll keep fighting, but it's important that you be prepared." Valeria returned to the room with a heavy heart, but she tried to hide her pain as she looked at Ethan. He was lying with his eyes half closed, but he still found the strength to smile when he saw her. "I heard the doctor," she said weakly. "He said I'm getting worse, didn't he?" Valeria sat down next to him, holding his hand tightly. "Ethan, the doctor said he'll do everything he can, and so will I. I promise I won't give up on you." He took a deep breath, fighting fatigue. "I know, Mom, but if I don't get better, you'll take care of Grandma and Grandpa. They need you too." Tears began to run down Valeria's face. "Ethan, you don't need to worry about that. You are their heart too. My heart. We're in this together." Ethan closed his eyes for a moment, as if gathering strength to continue. "Mom, if I don't make it, promise me you'll always remember me. Promise me you'll take care of the drawing I made of us." Valeria couldn't answer right away. She leaned over, hugged him gently, and whispered, "I promise, son, but you're not going anywhere. You have so much to live for, so much to draw, so much to dream." He gave a small smile despite the weakness that overwhelmed him. "I love you, Mom. You're the best gift I've ever received." Valeria. She stayed there, holding his hand and repeating softly, "I love you too, Ethan, with all my heart." As night fell and the room fell silent, she realized that this was the most difficult moment she had ever faced. But for Ethan's sake, she promised herself that she would remain strong because, even in the face of uncertainty, the love they shared was eternal, and no one could take that away from her. The hospital room was silent, lit only by the soft light coming from the hallway. Ethan was lying in bed, breathing with difficulty, but with a peaceful expression on his face. At his side, Valeria held his hand so carefully that she seemed afraid that a stronger touch might hurt him. Maria and Don Ernesto were sitting close together, their faces marked by pain, but with a serenity that only love could bring. Ethan slowly opened his eyes, looking at each of them as if he wanted to keep that moment forever. "You're still here," he said in a weak but loving voice. Maria stood up and took his other hand. "Of course we are, my love. We will always be with you. Always." Don Ernesto took a deep breath and smiled, even though tears fell without him being able to stop them. "You were never alone, Ethan, and you never will be." Ethan looked at Valeria and smiled slightly. "Full of love, Mom. You'll always be with me too, right?" Valeria leaned over and placed her hand on his face. "Always, son. No matter where you are, I'll be there. You'll never be alone." He closed his eyes for a moment, as if preparing for something important, and then opened them again. "You know, Mom, I thought I would be afraid, but I'm not anymore. I just feel love." Maria began to cry silently, squeezing his hand tighter. "You're so strong, Ethan. Stronger than all of us. You taught me to be this way," he replied. He said in a voice that was almost a whisper, "You always took care of me. I'm the luckiest boy in the world." Valeria couldn't hold back her tears, but she kept smiling at him. "And we are the luckiest to have you, son. You changed our lives forever." Ethan took a deep breath with visible effort and looked at each of them once more. "This has been the happiest day of my life because I have you here with me. You are everything to me." He gently squeezed Valeria's hand, staring at her. "Mom, you're the best mom in the world. Thank you for everything." Valeria leaned down to kiss his forehead, letting the tears flow without trying to hide them. "I love you, Ethan. I will always love you." With one last sigh, Ethan closed his eyes, still with a soft smile on his face. The room fell silent, but it was not an empty silence. It was a silence filled with love, gratitude, and a peace that Ethan had left as his last gift. Maria cried in Don Ernesto's arms while Valeria continued to hold his hand, her heart aching, but also filled with pride for the incredible child that Ethan had been. He was not just a patient, he was not just a child, he was a miracle, an example of love and strength that would never be forgotten. At that moment, everyone knew that even though he was gone, Ethan left a piece of himself in each of them. His smile, his courage, and his heart would live on forever. The days following Ethan's departure were the quietest Valeria had ever experienced. The hospital, once full of movement and sound, seemed empty. Every hallway reminded her of a smile. Every room brought back Ethan's soft laughter, or his drawings scattered around his room. Valeria felt the weight of a void that seemed endless. At home, the small box with Ethan's drawings was on the table. She couldn't open it. She ran her fingers over the lid, as if the simple touch could bring back that child who called her mom. But at the same time, she felt that he was still there, somehow, in her memories, in the love he had left behind. One quiet afternoon, Maria and Don Ernesto called Valeria. Their voices were marked by sadness, but they also carried a tone of gratitude. "Doctor," Maria began with a broken voice, "we wanted to thank you for everything you did for our grandson. You were much more than a doctor. You were the mother he needed." Valeria couldn't respond immediately. She wiped her tears and said, "I should be thanking you. Ethan taught me more than anyone else. He showed me what it means to love without limits. I will never forget that." Don Ernesto added firmly, "He always said that you made him feel loved, that it was the greatest gift he ever received. And although it hurts to know that, it gives us a little peace." After hanging up, Valeria walked to the small hospital garden where Ethan loved to feel the sun on his face. She sat on a bench and looked at the flowers swaying gently in the wind. It was there that she felt something different. It wasn't just sadness, it was a certainty. Ethan was gone, but the love he had spread was still alive, and it was her responsibility to keep it alive. "I can't let this end here, my son," she whispered, looking up at the sky. "You showed me that love transforms lives, and I will honor that. I will take care of other children as I took care of you. I will make sure no one feels as alone as you never felt. Lives, and I will honor that. I will take care of other children as I took care of you." I will make sure that no one feels as alone as you never felt." In the days that followed, Valeria began to plan something she had never imagined before. She contacted Maria and Don Ernesto to share her idea. "I want to create something in Ethan's name, a way to help other children who are struggling as he struggled. I want them to have the opportunity he had, and to know that they are loved." Maria responded excitedly, "If you do that, Doctor, we will help you in every way possible. Ethan would be so proud of you." Don Ernesto agreed with a firm voice. "He believed in you, Valeria, and we believe in you too." With the support of the grandparents and Ethan's constant agreement, Valeria began to build something that would be his legacy. It was her way of transforming grief into action, of filling the void with love. She knew that nothing could bring Ethan back, but she also knew that he had never completely left. He was in every child she would care for, in every smile she would help save. Every night before going to sleep, she would look at the drawing Ethan had made of her with the words, "Mom and Son," and whisper, "This is for you, my son, always for you." Valeria didn't waste any time. Every day that passed without Ethan was a reminder of the promise she had made to the boy. He had given her more than she could ever give him back: unconditional love, courage, and a new reason to live. Now she knew she had to transform that pain into something greater, something that could continue to spread the strength and hope that Ethan carried in his heart. She started with a blank notebook, writing down simple ideas. The name came immediately: the Ethan Foundation, a love that heals. The words were sincere, representing everything he had taught her. This foundation would be dedicated to helping children with serious illnesses by offering treatment, emotional support, and above all, love. "I don't want any child to go through this," Valeria explained at a meeting with hospital directors. "I want everyone to have a chance like Ethan had, and to feel loved, even in the most difficult moments." The idea quickly gained support. Nurses, doctors, and even townspeople offered to help. The foundation's first major event was organized in the hospital garden, the same place where Ethan had felt the sun on his face for the last time. Valeria made sure to decorate the space with his favorite colors and hang drawings made by the children in the hospital. On the day of the event, Maria and Don Ernesto were the first to arrive. Although grief was still visible on their faces, there was also a sparkle of purpose in their eyes. Maria carried a small photo of Ethan in her hands and walked carefully over to Valeria. "Doctor," Maria began in a soft voice, "we don't have words to thank you for what you are doing. It's much more than helping other children. It's keeping our Ethan's dream alive." Valeria took her hand and replied emotionally, "Maria, he changed my life. All of this is for him, and I want you to be by my side. You are the soul of this foundation." Don Ernesto, who had been listening quietly, nodded his head. "Ethan would be very proud. We will do everything we can to help. We will tell his story to the world so that others know how much love can transform." Maria and Don Ernesto became ambassadors for the foundation. They visited events, participated in campaigns, and shared Ethan's story with everyone they met. Every time they talked about him, there were tears, but also smiles, because remembering Ethan was remembering hope. "My grandson was a special child," said Maria at one of the first meetings with volunteers. "Not only did he fight bravely, but he also taught us the importance of being together. And that is what we want to do now, bring people together to help those in need." Don Ernesto, with his firm stance, added, "If Ethan could spread so much love in such a short time, imagine what we can achieve together in his name." The foundation began to grow. Small events in the town gained momentum, and soon neighboring cities also got involved. Every penny raised went toward treatments, toys, or even small outings so that the children could feel a little freedom. Valeria worked tirelessly, but she did not feel the weight of fatigue. For her, every smile she saw on the children cared for by the foundation was like seeing Ethan again. Every night, she looked at the drawing he had made of her with the phrase, "Mother and Son," and whispered, "You are still here, my son. In every child, we help." Maria and Don Ernesto, despite facing daily sadness, found strength in the mission of the foundation. They traveled to tell Ethan's story, inspiring other families and showing that even in pain, it was possible to find hope. The Ethan Foundation continued to grow, but what really made the difference was love. Every action, every act of help reflected the child who had touched so many lives. And in the hearts of all who participated, there was a certainty. Ethan was still alive, in every smile, every hug, every life transformed. Ethan's story not only transformed the lives of his family and Valeria, but also that of the entire town. The love and unity that emerged during the most difficult days did not disappear. On the contrary, they grew. Every person who had been involved in the campaign to help Ethan seemed to have understood something greater. Together, they could make a difference. At the market, conversations now revolved around new ideas for raising funds for other families in similar situations. At school, the children continued to make colorful drawings, but now with messages like, "You are strong," or "We are with you," and every time someone in the town needed help, a wave of solidarity arose. Doña Clara, who had organized the bazaar for Ethan, commented one day, "I learned that none of us is alone. If someone needs help, we are here." That's what Ethan taught us. So the small town became known. People from neighboring cities began to seek help there, not only for financial support, but also for the affection that everyone offered. The town had become a welcoming place where love spoke louder than any difficulty. Inspired by this union, Valeria and the Ethan Foundation decided to create something special in the hospital where it had all happened. The garden where Ethan had felt the sun on his face and seen butterflies for the last time was transformed into a memorial dedicated to him. At the inauguration, Maria and Don Ernesto held hands, while Valeria held the plaque that would be placed in the center of the garden. Ethan's drawing, the one he had made of her as a mother, was engraved there with the phrase, "Ethan, a love that heals." Maria could not hold back her tears as she watched the plaque being placed in its spot. "He loved this garden. He always said it was like a little piece of heaven," said Don Ernesto, his voice breaking. With tears in his eyes, he put a hand on Valeria's shoulder. "Now this place will be a refuge for other families, as it was for us." The garden became a living space. People from different places began to visit it, bringing flowers, lighting candles, or simply sitting down to feel the peace it conveyed. Children played bersamais near the flowers, laughing, while their families found comfort in looking at the plaque that told Ethan's story. One afternoon, Valeria was sitting on a bench under the big tree, exactly where she had sat with Ethan months before. A woman approached with a child in her arms. "Dr. Valeria," she asked timidly, "I heard about this garden and about Ethan. I just wanted to tell you that his story gave me the strength to fight for my son." Valeria stood up, moved, and took the woman's hand. "Ethan taught us that love can change everything. If you believe, he would believe too." The woman smiled, and her son played near the flowers, touching the petals with curiosity. Valeria looked up at the sky, feeling the wind gently brush her face there among the trees and flowers. She felt Ethan. He wasn't just a memory. It was as if he were there, smiling. Ethan's impact was visible in every corner of that garden. He had left more than nostalgia. He had left a legacy of hope, love, and unity. And for every person who passed by, he was an example that even the shortest lives can leave eternal marks. That night, after the event in the hospital garden, Valeria returned home with a heavy heart, but also full of purpose. The words of each person who had shared their gratitude for Ethan echoed in her mind. He was no longer there physically, but his presence was felt in every gesture, every smile, and every tear. Sitting at the table with the drawing he had made in her hands, Valeria whispered to herself, "I promise you, my son, I will fight for every child who needs love as you need it. I will be the mother you taught me to be for all the Ethans who cross my path." The next morning, Valeria went to the Ethan Foundation. When she saw the small makeshift office they had set up in the hospital, she felt that this was only the beginning. She gathered the team, which now included volunteers from the town and even from nearby cities, and shared her vision. "We will not stop here. she said firmly. "Ethan showed us that love can change everything. I want this foundation to reach more children, more families. I want no one to feel alone." The volunteer's eyes shone with the same determination. Maria, who had come to help that day, put her hand on Valeria's shoulder. "He would be so proud of you, Doctor, and we are going to help you fulfill that promise." Don Ernesto, at her side, added, "We are going to make this grow, not only for Ethan, but for everyone who needs it." In the following months, the Ethan Foundation expanded in ways no one could have imagined. With the support of charity events, donations, and the strength of the people, they managed to open a larger space equipped to offer not only medical, but also emotional support. There, the children could receive treatment, play, and above all, feel loved. Every wall in that place had something special. On one of them hung Ethan's drawings, a constant reminder that it had all started with him. On another, photos of the children who were being helped showed smiles that had previously seemed impossible. One day, while Valeria was organizing a new fundraising campaign, a mother entered with a girl of about 5 years old. The girl was pale, but her curious eyes looked around at everything. "Dr. Valeria," said the mother, her voice breaking. "I heard about the foundation. My daughter needs help, but I don't know where to start." Valeria bent down to the level of the girl, who was holding a small toy in her hands. "You've already taken the first step," she said with a kind smile. "Now we're going to take care of her together." The mother cried with relief as Valeria took the girl's hand and led her to one of the treatment rooms. For Valeria, every time she helped a new family, it was as if she were fulfilling the promise she had made to Ethan. In the following years, the foundation Ethan continued to grow. Valeria received recognition in various places, but that was never the most important thing for her. What really mattered were the fruits of the love that Ethan had sown. Families that previously had no hope now found comfort and support. Children facing enormous challenges could smile again, knowing they were not alone. And every night before going to sleep, Valeria would look up at the sky where the stars shone silently and say, "Ethan, you are in every smile, in every life we touch. I am still here, my son, fighting for you and for all the others who need me." Valeria walked through the garden at the end of a long but rewarding day. The sun was already setting, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, while the wind gently moved the flowers. It was the same time when she and Ethan used to sit together talking about the clouds, the butterflies, and the dreams he had. She approached the bench where they had shared so many precious moments and sat down slowly. Looking around, the silence was comforting, as if the garden itself were listening to her thoughts. She ran her fingers over the plaque with his drawing and the phrase that always moved her, "Ethan, a love that heals." "You are here, aren't you, my son?" she asked in a low voice, almost a whisper. "I feel you in all of this." As she looked up at the sky, a blue butterfly flew by near her. Valeria smiled automatically. It was like a little sign, something that made her feel that he was there, watching over her, taking care of her. She closed her eyes, and for a moment she could almost hear his laughter, see his smile, feel the lightness of his presence beside her. "I'm still fighting, Ethan," she said, her voice breaking. "For you, and for all the children who need someone to believe in them. You taught me that love has no end, that it lives in everything we touch." Suddenly, the wind blew stronger, bringing with it the scent of the flowers in the garden. Valeria felt as if it were a soft, loving embrace. She opened her eyes, looked up at the sky, and saw that the stars were beginning to appear. They weren't just bright dots to her. It was as if one of them were smiling. "Thank you for guiding me, my son," she continued. "Thank you for showing me that even when everything seems difficult, there is always a reason to smile, to keep going." She stayed there a little longer, feeling a peace that was difficult to describe. The garden was not just a physical place. It was a space where Ethan's love lived on, touching those who passed by, transforming lives as he always did. Deep down, Valeria knew that Ethan had never really left. He was in every smile she saw on the children's faces, in every gesture of solidarity that arose in the foundation, in every moment when someone chose to love and fight, even in the greatest adversity. When she got up, Valeria looked at the plaque once more, and put her hand on her chest, feeling her heartbeat. "You are eternal, Ethan, and I promise I will continue to spread the love you left for the world." As she left the garden, she felt lighter, as if Ethan were by her side, walking with her. His story was not just a memory. It was a living lesson that showed how love and solidarity had the power to transform lives. At that moment, Valeria understood that Ethan's greatest gift was not only what he had taught her, but the impact his story would have forever. He had shown that even in the greatest difficulties, love could prevail, and that would be the message she would carry with her, sharing it with the world so that it would never be forgotten. What would you do if you were in Valeria's place, or in the place of Ethan's grandparents, or even Ethan himself? Share your opinion in the comments. It could inspire many people. Don't forget to activate the bell so you don't miss any of the upcoming exciting stories that will touch your heart and make you reflect on love, solidarity, and the true meaning of life. And if your heart is still heavy, don't miss the video on the screen. It's a story full of emotion that has already made many people cry and reflect on what really matters.